The envelope was cream-colored, thick enough to be expensive, thin enough to feel empty. My name, just Noah, was written in looping black ink I hadn't seen in 5 years. No return address. Just a Sonoma postmark, and the faintest scent of old wood and crushed time when I held it up to my nose, because apparently I'm the kind of idiot who sniffs paper now. I didn't open it at first. I stared at it while my espresso went cold, while morning turned to afternoon in my tiny Seattle apartment that always smelled like damp socks no matter how much sage I burned. The letter sat on my counter like a ghost refusing to leave, even as I moved around it, stepping over laundry and last week's regrets. When I finally opened it, it said 5 words. He's dying. Please come home. No signature. But I knew who wrote it. Iris never wasted words. Never needed to. The drive down the coast felt like time travel in reverse. I left behind rain-slicked city streets, the glass towers, and coffee shops full of people pretending they had somewhere important to be. I traded them for redwoods that leaned in close, listening, and gas station coffee that tasted like burnt cornflakes. I didn't rush. Part of me hoped I'd arrived too late. That the old man would already be gone and I could say, well, I tried, and turn right back around. But the other part, smaller, quieter, wanted one last chance to look him in the eyes and ask, why? The vineyard came into view just past the bend on Solano Ridge Road. The sign still read Varela and Sons, though only one son had ever really mattered to him, and it sure as hell wasn't me. The gate was open. That alone made my stomach turn. I drove in slow. The gravel still sang under my tires, the same crunch I remembered from when I was 10 and obsessed with sneaking out barefoot to watch the sunrise from the water tower. The house sat in its usual spot like a brooding animal, stuccoed walls, ivy climbing up like a second skin, and the same cracked weather vanes spinning above the porch, pointing in a direction that didn't exist. Nothing had changed, but it all felt smaller. I parked near the barn. The vineyard stretched out behind it, rows of gnarled vines, their leaves browned and crisping in the late summer heat. The grapes hadn't been picked yet. Late harvest season. That meant everyone would be tense and sweaty and pretending not to notice each other's tempers. Iris met me at the door. She looked older than I remembered, sharper around the jaw, hair pulled into a messy knot like she'd forgotten it was still on her head. But her eyes, those sharp gray eyes we both got from our mother, hadn't changed. You came, she said, voice soft, almost guilty. I read the letter, I replied. She nodded and stepped aside to let me in. The house smelled like rosemary, old oak, and whatever guilt hangs in the air when someone's been dying in the room upstairs. Every board creaked in the same places, like it had been waiting to scold me for leaving. We didn't hug. We weren't that kind of family. Where is he? Upstairs. Sedated. The hospice nurse is here most days now. And Dante? In the fields. Pretending nothing's wrong. Of course he was. Later, I stood at the threshold of my father's room. He looked smaller than I expected. Shrunken under a quilt, skin papery, chest rising slow like the land itself was trying to decide if it still wanted him. His eyes opened. Just barely. Noah, he rasped. I didn't step closer. I didn't take his hand. I just said, yeah, it's me. He stared at me for a long time. Maybe he was trying to remember who I was. Maybe he knew exactly who I was and just didn't know what to say. Then he closed his eyes. That was it. That night, I slept in the guest room because my room had been turned into a pantry. Not a joke. Shelves lined the walls, packed with jars of olives, canned tomatoes, and preserves no one had touched in years. Someone had tossed an air mattress in the middle like a peace offering. I laid there in the dark, the sound of crickets slipping through the cracked window, the scent of pickled garlic soaking into my soul. And all I could think was, why now? Why call me back if nothing's changed? Except, I knew something had changed. Otherwise, Iris wouldn't have. Breakfast at the Varela house was always quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet. Like everyone agreed to pretend we didn't hate mornings or each other. The next day, that silence felt weaponized. I sat at the end of the long kitchen table while Iris made toast and ignored me with practiced grace. The old radio played something soft from the pantry, Elvis, maybe. I couldn't tell if the music was for comfort or to drown out the tension. Coffee? She asked without turning around. Only if it's been poisoned. That earned the faintest smile. Barely a twitch at the corner of her mouth, but I'll take it. She handed me a chipped mug that said, World's Best Dad. I stared at it until she realized and groaned. Sorry. Habit. Honestly, I'm surprised you didn't throw this in the fireplace after he disowned me. She shrugged, not meeting my eye. There are things I wanted to do that I didn't. We all made choices. There it was again. That strange undercurrent, like she was waiting for me to ask the right question, but didn't want to hand it to me. We didn't talk about the inheritance at first. Back then, 5 years ago, I was supposed to take over the vineyard. I'd studied oenology in Napa, shadowed sommeliers, even convinced myself I liked the taste of red wine at room temperature. The land and we were supposed to grow old together. Then everything changed. They said I stole money, that I rerouted funds from the estate account to a personal investment, something dumb, something desperate. I remember staring at my father while he read the bank records like a death sentence. He didn't raise his voice. That was the worst part. He just nodded once, quietly, and said, "Pack your things." I begged him to listen. Swore I didn't touch a cent. He didn't believe me. Or maybe he did, and it didn't matter. A week later, I was gone. Iris didn't say goodbye. Dante didn't have to. His smirk said everything. "Still tastes like dirt," I muttered as I sipped my coffee on the back porch later. The vineyard sprawled in front of me, vines curled like gnarled fingers, sun beating down like it held a grudge. Iris joined me, sipping her tea with both hands. "Dante's been letting it go," she said, nodding toward a collapsed trellis halfway down the hill. "He says the harvest is late because of the heat. But honestly, I think he just doesn't care. He was always more into appearances than actual work." She hummed in agreement. "I found your name on the ledger last month," she said suddenly. My head turned so fast it almost cracked. "Excuse me. Dad's financial books. The real ones. He kept them in the wine cellar, under the old Syrah barrels." She sipped her tea like she wasn't dropping a grenade into my lap. "Your name's not on the withdrawal," she continued. "It never was. But someone added a fake copy to the digital records. The paper ones are clean." I set my cup down, hand shaking. "Who?" I asked, though I already knew. "I don't know," she lied. "Badly. Elijah." Her face tightened. "He had access to Dad's accounts. So did Dante. So you bring me back now, after 5 years? Why not tell me before?" "Because he's dying now, and this might be the last chance to fix anything." I stood alone in the wine cellar that afternoon. The air was cool, still carrying the musk of oak and dust. I found the records where she said they'd be beneath a tarp, next to some ancient corking equipment. The truth was there in fading ink. No signature, no transfer, no crime. I hadn't stolen anything. And yet, they let me rot outside the family like a splinter they didn't have the guts to pull out. That night, Dante found me on the porch again. Same chair, same posture. But he didn't bring coffee. Just stood there with his arms crossed like a disappointed coach. "Iris says you've been snooping," he said. "I call it catching up. Whatever you're looking for, it won't change what happened. Funny thing about truth, it doesn't care what you think happened." His jaw twitched. I'd hit something. "You always wanted this place to yourself," I added. "Even when we were kids. You'd hide the pruning shears just so I couldn't help Dad in the fields. That's rich, coming from the guy who ran off." "I didn't run. I was shoved." He stepped closer. "You weren't cut out for this life, Noah. You never were." "I was cut out, Dante. Let's not twist the knife and call it surgery." His face hardened. "You think you're the victim here, but you're not the one who stayed. You're not the one who had to clean up the mess." I stood up slowly, leveled my eyes at his. "You're right," I said. "I left. But the thing about rot is, it spreads, even when you ignore it." He didn't respond. Just walked off, back into the house, boots crunching against the gravel path like punctuation. Later that night, I sat by the vines again, this time with a bottle of red I didn't recognize. I watched the stars flicker above the hills and wondered if they'd always looked so cold. Inside the house, my father slept. Iris paced. And somewhere, Dante stewed like an overripe grape, ready to burst. The unsaid years weren't staying unsaid for much. Harvest started the next morning like it always did, with aching backs, scratched hands, and way too much yelling for 6 a.m. The vineyard team was a mix of old-timers and seasonal workers who knew how to keep their heads down. They barely glanced at me as I joined the line, grabbing a worn pair of clippers and a crate. No one said welcome back. No one needed to. The vines didn't care who I was. They just needed cutting. By 10 a.m., I'd forgotten about family drama and financial betrayals. Mostly. The sun was high, my shirt clung to my back, and my arms burned from repetition. But there was something weirdly comforting about the rhythm. Snip, twist, drop, move. The dirt smelled like memory, sweet with rot, touched by salt from the morning fog. Every so often, I'd wipe my brow and glance at the field stretching ahead. They looked endless, like a confession no one wanted to say out loud. Iris showed up just after lunch, a scarf over her head and a clipboard in hand. Classic move. She hated field work but loved making it look like she was involved. Didn't think you'd last more than a morning, she said, eyeing my blistered palms. I shrugged. Pain's honest. She sat down on an overturned crate, watching me finish a row. Do you miss it? She asked. I paused. I missed who I was when I thought this place meant something. Her face twisted in something between sympathy and guilt. Elijah and we weren't trying to hurt you, she said. Back then, I know. But it's more complicated now. I know that too. She hesitated, then added, he wanted to come today. I told him not to. Because you didn't want me to bury the pruning shears in his neck? Because you deserved a moment to remember the land without the people who poisoned it. That caught me off guard. I looked at her. Really looked. Maybe she had been trying in her own way. Later, as I trimmed the last vine in the lower row, I found something wedged in the soil, a small silver button, tarnished, with a crack running through the center. I wiped it clean with my shirt. My heart kicked sideways. It was from my old jacket, the one I'd worn the day I was told to leave. I'd torn it climbing over the fence behind the barn, too stubborn to walk out the front door like a criminal. I held it like it was an artifact, a tiny relic of the moment my life derailed. Funny how the earth never forgets. It just waits for the right season to spit the truth back out. That evening, Iris and I stomped grapes together. It was a tradition Mom used to insist on, an old-school, feet-in-the-barrel kind of harvest ritual. Most wineries had moved on from it, but Varella's were always half a century behind the rest of the world. Iris laughed as her foot slipped on the slick skin of a Cabernet grape, catching herself on my arm. You used to cheat, she said, breathless. I preferred competitive. No, you'd dump an extra juice from the kitchen to win the taste test. I grinned. You can't prove that. She narrowed her eyes. I had suspicion. We stomped until our calves ached. Purple juice splattered up to our knees. The smell was wild, fermented sugar, earth, and sun-baked memory. For a moment, it felt like being kids again. Like maybe the damage was reparable. Then Elijah showed up. He hovered at the edge of the barn, hands in his pockets, like a stranger too polite to knock. Iris tensed beside me. I stepped out of the barrel, feet squelching, and grabbed a rag to wipe my legs. You lost. I asked. Noah, he said like the name weighed something. I didn't come to fight. Then why are you here? He swallowed. To explain. You had 5 years. He stepped forward. I didn't know Dante was going to frame you. Not at first. That stopped me. But when I found out, it was too late. Your dad believed it. Iris begged me not to say anything, said we'd find another way. And then you were gone. I turned to Iris, but she looked away. So you both knew. And said nothing. Elijah stepped closer. I wanted to fix it. Too bad this isn't a Hallmark movie. He winced. Look, I'm not asking for forgiveness. Just don't let Dante win. He's gutting the vineyard, selling off sections of land. The trust is almost dry. My chest burned. Of course he was. Choke the land, sell the bones. I don't care about the business, I said flatly. I care about the lie. And the fact that everyone let it happen. I walked past him, barefoot and dripping grape juice, not bothering to look back. That night, I sat alone near the rows we used to call the Heart Line, Mom's name for the vines planted the year I was born. They were overgrown now, untamed. Like no one wanted to touch them. I leaned against the post and let the silence stretch. The land might not love me back, but it remembered me. And I was remembering it. The cellar had always felt like a tomb. Even when I was a kid, I hated going down there. The air was too still, the kind of cold that didn't come from temperature but from time. Like the walls remembered things they weren't supposed to. I went down there that night not because I wanted to, but because Iris left the key on the kitchen table with a note. You need to see it. That was all. So I went. The floorboards groaned overhead as I descended. The light switch didn't work. Of course it didn't. So I used my phone's flashlight, the beam cutting through dust and old cobwebs like a scalpel. Barrels lined the far wall. Some of them still marked with my initials, from back when I thought I'd be the next in line. I found the ledger Iris mentioned tucked between 2 moldy boxes. It looked like a Bible, worn leather, frayed edges, spine cracked from too many secrets. Inside were pages of neat handwriting. My father's. Not numbers this time. Letters. Not emails. Not texts. Actual, handwritten letters. Dozens of them, each one dated but never mailed. Some addressed to people I didn't recognize, old business partners, lawyers, maybe even friends he never told us about. But one was different. No envelope. Just a single folded page with my name in the top corner. Noah. I've rewritten this letter 3 times. Burned 2 of them. You don't know it, But I watched you leave from the study window. You jumped the fence like you were trying to prove a point. You never saw me. I wanted to believe you stole that money. It made everything easier. If you were guilty, then I didn't have to face the rot in the family. I didn't have to admit that your brother, my own son, was capable of something worse than ambition. But you didn't. And I knew that deep down. I saw the panic in your eyes. And still, I let you go. Not because you were wrong, but because I was too proud to admit I'd put my trust in the wrong hands. Iris begged me to make it right. I told her I would. Then I didn't. This land was always supposed to be yours. You were the only one who listened to it, who understood it wasn't just rows of vines, but something alive. Now it's dying, Noah, just like me. And I don't know if either of us deserves saving. But if you come back, if you're reading this, then maybe there's still something worth holding on to. Forgive me, if you can. Dad. I read it twice, then a third time. The paper shook in my hands. Not from anger. From grief. Grief for something that never even had the chance to heal. I walked upstairs in a fog. The kitchen was empty, the lights dimmed, the clock ticking too loud. I found Iris on the porch again, wrapped in one of Mom's old quilts. I read it, I said. She didn't ask what. She just nodded. I used to think he didn't care, I said. Turns out he did. He just didn't know how to show it. He was raised to believe men didn't apologize. Just corrected course and hoped no one noticed. Yeah, well, you should have noticed. I sat beside her, the weight of the letter still heavy in my pocket. He told you about the forgery? I asked. Not directly, she said. But he started keeping everything handwritten after that. Didn't trust the books anymore. You think Dante knows I found it? She looked at me, solemn. Dante knows something. And that scares him. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of guilt. Because of clarity. There's a certain kind of stillness that settles when you finally see the full picture and realize the frame was always tilted. Dante cornered me the next morning near the barn. No greetings. No preamble. You've been digging, he said. Figured someone should. His jaw clenched. You think you've got it all figured out now, huh? No. But I've got enough to know you didn't just lie. You let me burn. He stepped forward. You always had a martyr complex. Maybe it's time you admit you liked being the victim. I smiled. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. That's rich coming from a man who's been draining the land dry while wearing Dad's watch. You don't belong here anymore, Noah. Maybe not. But the land disagrees. He looked at me like he might swing. But he didn't. He just walked away, fist clenched like he was holding back thunder. Later that day, I stood at the far edge of the vineyard, the place where the soil was softest, where the grapevines curved like a question mark. I knelt, dug my fingers into the dirt. It clung to me, still warm from the sun, still alive. I closed my eyes and breathed it in. And for the first time in years, I felt something close to. The sky turned the color of steel the morning it all came down. I'd forgotten what Sonoma looked like before a storm, how the hills seemed to hold their breath, how the grape leaves turned underside up like they knew what was coming. The air tasted like copper, like something was about to snap. And then the hospice nurse came downstairs with that look. I knew before she spoke. It was peaceful, she said, hands folded like a prayer. He slipped away just after sunrise. Peaceful. Right. My father had been a walking contradiction, commanding but absent, proud but private, the kind of man who built legacies with silence and expected love to be inherited like land. But in the end, he died in a quiet room, wrapped in regret, a letter never sent still hiding in the dark. Iris sat on the porch, not crying, just staring at the vineyard like it owed her something. Dante wasn't there. Of course he wasn't. Probably out in the fields pretending it didn't matter. I didn't feel sad. I felt untethered. By mid-afternoon, the clouds broke open. A real storm, not just a drizzle, but a full-on downpour, the kind that strips leaves from branches and turns the dirt to soup. The harvest crew scrambled to tarp the barrels and equipment. Iris ran to help, her boots skidding in the mud, hair plastered to her forehead. I found Dante in the barn, staring at a stack of invoices like they might catch fire if he glared hard enough. He's gone, I said. He didn't look up. I figured. I stepped closer. The storm hammered the tin roof overhead. Thunder cracked like a warning shot. I'm not leaving, I said. That got his attention. He turned, eyes narrow. What are you talking about? I'm staying. For the harvest. For the land. This isn't your home anymore. Funny, I said. The soil seems to disagree. His mouth twisted. You think one letter makes you the good son again? No. But it makes you the liar. I pulled the letter from my coat pocket and set it on the table. Damp at the corners, but still legible. He didn't touch it. You always had the charm, he said quietly. Always had Dad's attention. I spent my whole life cleaning up your messes. My messes? You mean the fake theft? Or the trust fund you siphoned while he was too sick to notice? Don't pretend you didn't enjoy being the victim. Don't pretend you weren't happy to be the executioner. The barn door slammed open behind me. Iris. Soaked through. Pale-faced. You two need to stop, she snapped. We both turned. There's more at stake here than pride, she said. Dad left a codicil. An amendment to the will. I felt the breath leave Dante's chest before he even spoke. He what? Iris nodded. He had it notarized 2 months ago. Changed the beneficiary. Everything goes to Noah. Silence. Outside, the storm howled louder. Like the vineyard itself was holding judgment. That night, after the rain finally slowed to a whisper, we sat at the old kitchen table. Just me and Iris. A bottle of Dad's last private reserve between us. 1 glass each. You knew, didn't you? I asked. She nodded slowly. He told me a week before the letter came. Why not sooner? Because I wanted you to come back for you. Not for revenge. Not for money. Just because I missed my brother. I couldn't speak. I just reached out, poured her another glass, and clinked mine to hers. To what's left, I said. To what we make of it, she replied. The funeral was small. No speeches. Just the land, the wind, and the people who still believed the soil mattered. Dante showed up late. Stood at the edge of the field, hands in his pockets, a ghost at his own reckoning. He didn't speak to me, but he didn't have to. The look on his face said enough. You won. But it didn't feel like winning. It felt like inheriting a wound. That evening, I stood under the oak tree near the heartline vines. The sky was clearing, stars pricking through the dark like needles through cloth. I held a single clipping in my hand, a young vine, just starting to root. I'd taken it quietly, wrapped it in cloth, pressed it to my chest. Not to steal, to start over. Back in Seattle, I had an empty window box. No vines. No soil that remembered my name. Seattle in October isn't kind to plants or people, really. The rain seeps into everything, the kind of damp that wraps around your ribs and makes your coffee taste like surrender. But in a little clay planter box outside my apartment window, something was growing. The clipping from the heartline row had taken root. Not much, just a few brave green tendrils reaching toward the gray sky like they didn't know any better. I'd been watching it every morning, brushing my teeth, staring through the window like some hopeful ghost. And for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the past to call. I didn't go back to Sonoma for a while. Let Iris handle the paperwork, the seasonal hires, the whispers from old vineyard neighbors wondering why the good son had suddenly returned and the other one had vanished like a bad rumor. Dante left the night of the funeral. No note. Just his boots gone from the porch and the echo of a man who'd mistaken possession for legacy. I didn't feel like chasing him. Maybe he'd find peace somewhere that didn't have our father's shadow stitched into every inch of sky. The land was technically mine now. On paper. But that didn't mean I knew what to do with it. Owning a place like that was like inheriting a wound. You could heal it, sure, but the scar would always remember where it came from. I talked to Iris every week. Sometimes about business, mostly about everything else. She told me the vines were responding to new soil treatments. The grapes were richer this year. The barrels were finally aging again without leaking guilt onto the cellar floor. She asked when I'd come visit. I said soon. Still haven't packed a bag. One morning, I found an envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Just my name in looping black ink. For a second, my throat tightened like it had back in part one of this whole mess. But this time, it was from Iris. Inside was a photo. The vineyard. Sunset bleeding across the hills. A new trellis in the heartline row, stronger this time, with a plaque nailed into the base. It read, To Noah, may the roots we save grow stronger than the ones we lost. Underneath the photo was a note. Come plant another. That night, I sat by my tiny window with a glass of wine, one of the bottles Iris had shipped north. A new vintage stamped with both our initials. It didn't taste like revenge, or bitterness, or ghosts. It tasted like dust and sunlight and maybe, just maybe, forgiveness. Outside, the vine on my windowsill shivered in the wind, but held. And that was enough.